You're listening to the Vacation Rental Success Podcast, and with over 1.6 million downloads, this is the place to be for all your short-term rental knowledge as part of the Vacation Rental Formula Business School. If you're a regular listener, you know Heather and the VRF B School team are now specializing in coaching and consultancy for short-term rental property management, and now with a laser focus on incorporating AI into your daily operations. If you're thinking AI sounds exciting but have no idea where to start, then you'll want to hear this. We're running a brand new series of free webinars designed specifically for short-term rental operators who want to get ahead of the curve without drowning in the tech overwhelm. Inside these sessions, we'll break down what AI actually looks like in a real property management business, from automating guest messages to leveling up your systems, marketing, and team operations. And if you've ever wished someone on your team could take the lead on all this, well, that's exactly what the AI Ambassador program is built for. The webinars will walk you through how it works, what you will be implementing, and why early adopters like you will be ahead of the industry curve. So pull out your Notes app because you're going to want in on this. Visit the link in the description of this episode for more information or visit the show notes. Stay tuned as we'll talk more about this in the mid-episode break. So without further delay, here's your host, Heather Bayer.
This is the Vacation Rental Success Podcast, keeping you up to date with news, views, information and resources on this rapidly changing short-term rental business. I'm your host, Heather Bayer, and with 25 years of experience in this industry, I'm making sure you know what's hot, what's not, what's new, and what will help make your business a success. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Success Podcast. This is your host, Heather Bayer, and I'm so delighted to be back with you once again. We talk on this show a lot about building businesses that create freedom of time, freedom of income, freedom of choice. That's what I've been doing for the last 20 to 30 years. And today's guest is someone who's not only done that for herself, but she's also helped tens of thousands of other women to do the same. So I'm thrilled today to be joined by Stacey St. She's a short-term rental expert, she's an investor, a mentor, and founder of the STR Sisterhood, which is a powerhouse community of over 66,000 women from around the world. Her Facebook group is called Female Short-Term Rental Investors. And 66.4 thousand members. But what started for Stacey as a single Airbnb while she was still working full-time in the corporate world has since grown into a multi-seven-figure short-term rental business and a global movement that's empowering women to take control of their financial futures. Stacey now leads a suite of programs that meet women wherever they are in their short-term rental journey, whether they're launching their first property or scaling a growing portfolio. Today, we're diving into her story, from her first steps into the short-term rental world, which was only back in 2020, to what it really takes to create a business that supports your life and not the other way around. And you'll find quite a bit of motivation in here too. So, listen in. This is going to be a good one. Well, I am so delighted to have with me today Stacey St. and I'm sure many of you have heard of Stacey, but weirdly, we have never actually met or connected in all these years. So this is super exciting for me, Stacey. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and I have to say, I love your accent so much, and I love how you say my last name. Will you just say it one more time so I can hear it? It's so cool.
Oh, well, it's Stacey St.
That's so good. See, I have the American accent where it's St. John. So,
right.
Again, I'm totally derailing your podcast, but I'm like, that is such a beautiful accent. I just want to hear it again.
Thank you. Yeah, that's funny because I'm often, because in England, sometimes the ST is pronounced sin.
Yes.
So St. John.
Yes. And so when I go to English pubs, which isn't very often, or when I've traveled over to England, they do say St. John, right?
Yeah.
That's so wild.
When we first came over here and I got my office manager who was Canadian, and she sat in my office and I was trying to interview her and she kept saying, "Can you say that again?"
I love it. I'm sure your listeners are like, can we move on past the name and the accent?
Well,
please?
I don't know. I mean, I interviewed, I don't know if you've come across Neely Khan.
Sure.
Neely has the most beautiful cut glass English accent. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I interviewed her a couple of weeks ago. And that's what people were saying. I just tuned in to listen to the accents. Anyway, for anybody who doesn't know who Stacey St. John is, can you give us a brief bio? You know, you do this all the time. So
Yeah,
let's
no
hear
problem. No problem. So I will say I'm a multi-path entrepreneur. I am a real estate investor and absolutely love the world of real estate. I am a full service property manager and short-term rental co-host. I am a fellow podcast host as well, and also lead communities of women all around the world who eat, sleep, breathe, and talk short-term rentals and vacation rentals every day. It's such a delight.
Well, yeah, I've been doing that for 30 years, and it's every so often I try and sneak out of it, but it doesn't happen. I always come back in. So, you know, let's go back to the start of your journey. You know, can you take us back to your very first short-term rental investment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I previous to short-term rentals, I was actually investing in long-term rentals. And when COVID hit, actually, all of these eviction moratoriums started popping up in the US. And my husband and I were actually finishing up a flip, and we were preparing originally to buy another long-term rental. And we just felt like it was a bit risky. You know, we thought, you know, as landlords, my goodness, if our tenants don't pay, we have no recourse. And so we decided, well, heck, if we buy a short-term rental, at least someone has to pay in order to get in the front door. And so we thought, well, let's buy a short-term rental. And I started doing research and really learning the industry. We honed in on a market. I really had, I will say, a small budget and big dreams. And I wanted to be on the beach, and I had less than $100,000 to spend. Okay. And
when was this? What year was this?
This was in September of 2020 is when we bought our first one.
Not that long ago then.
No, not at all.
And right in the middle of COVID.
Smack dab. Yeah. And so we decided that we really wanted to find the right market for us. We wanted to be, again, on the beach. I really wanted to be oceanfront, and I also wanted to be within a day's drive. My home is in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Midwest. And long story short, I landed on Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is where still to this day, the majority of my portfolio lives. And we actually bought 2 properties at the same time and have never looked back ever since. My entire life has changed.
With $100,000?
I know, isn't it crazy? I always say to people, if I would have known what the real estate market was going to do, I would have bought every condo known to man in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah, because at that time, it was just before the market really began to rise. Because I know, you know, I was in Ontario and in the cottage rental market, and it was around about the fall of 2020 when it just went wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
But before that, you know, people were still, what's going to happen with this pandemic? Are we going to be around? And property, you know, the prices up here anyway were pretty stagnant. And then once we sort of hit that fall time, it just was crazy.
Well, it was interesting also. I mean, quite candidly, I hadn't followed the Myrtle Beach market prior to when I was looking to purchase, but I really feel like I was able to enter the market in a really unicorn time, right? So in Myrtle Beach, there are literally thousands of condos on the ocean front. And you might recall that a lot of vacation rental markets were not allowing guests to come. A lot of buildings, a lot of resorts had kind of closed the doors through the pandemic, and a lot of owners became extremely nervous. And so there was a lot of inventory on the market.
Mhm.
I also love renovating properties. And so I was looking to buy ugly properties, and there were a whole wealth of opportunities in Myrtle Beach, right? So again, it was a unique time indeed. And again, I sure look back and say to myself, man, I wish I would have bought more.
Well, even with buying with that sort of unicorn element in mind, tell us what worked, what didn't, and what's actually stuck with you since that time.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I did buy 2 ugly condos at the same time. We did some cosmetic renovations, light renovations, repositioned the properties. And at first, again, just entering into this world, I was still working in the corporate world, had a very busy job. And although I had educated myself in short-term rentals and vacation rentals, you know how it is. You can read a book and all kinds of articles and listen to podcasts, but the proof is in the pudding. You don't actually have experience until you start doing the work. And I felt at the time it was going to better serve my guests as well as myself by hiring a property manager. Mm-hmm. And so hired out a property manager, and it was very evident very quickly that my expectations about care of my property, about cleanliness, about transparency were very different than what was actually being delivered. And so what really didn't work at the time changed the trajectory actually of my business because I had several what I like to call come to Jesus meetings with my property manager. And I decided after several months, you know what? I'm going to take over. And I built a team from the start because I still was working in the corporate world. And fast forward, people then started coming to me asking me, hey, your calendar is full and mine isn't. Will you manage my property? And that's how I ended up becoming a property manager myself.
What were you doing that was so different? What different strategies did you put in place that wasn't that were apparently not there with the people you hired?
Well, a couple of things. I will say one of the key strategies was proactive revenue management. Mm-hmm. So what was happening with my existing property manager and what I saw with so many others is they would list the property on the OTAs. And their strategy was, if it wasn't booking, you just reduce the price. Just reduce the price mm-hmm. until you get a booking. And for me, it felt very reactionary, number one, and not strategic, number two. And so I hired someone from the get-go who had a ton of experience with revenue management. Number two, as I mentioned, there were lots of ugly condos in Myrtle Beach. And I was very, very particular about the properties that I purchased, as well as the properties that I took on within my portfolio. So I have very, very strict quality standards, as well as aesthetic standards to make sure that there's some consistency with our portfolio. So whether you're checking into a 1-bedroom condo in Cherry Grove or a 5-bedroom beach house in Surfside, that there is a consistency of what you can expect as far as quality and standards. So that was also, a bit unique in the market. And for most other property managers, I will say it is a volume play, meaning it's churn and burn, it's heads and beds. And for me, it's much more about, I really strive to treat every property in my portfolio as my own, meaning I care for it like it's my own. And I'm probably much more in tune with what an investor is going to want and desire with return on investment. And I'm thinking about them, my clients, as investors all the time. And again, a lot of property managers, at least in my market, don't really have that line of sight.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's something I always did with my company was, my owners, the people that came to me with the properties, they were not, it was not one size fits all. Mm-hmm. There were different types. There were the investor types, the ones that wanted just that clear return, and would be happy just to hand it over and say, go look after this. And then there were the family types, they were buying it for themselves, for their family to go and have a couple of weeks vacation, but they wanted it rented out in the meantime. So I'm sure you've come across all these different types. How does your criteria, when you say, it's a 1-bedroom condo or it's a 5-bedroom beach house, can you give us some indications of what those criteria are that would perhaps, meet the needs of all those owner clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, the property has to be modernized, meaning if I look at photos of it and it looks like my grandma decorated it, it's probably not going to be a fit for my portfolio. So I am looking, it doesn't have to be luxury by any stretch of the imagination, but we do need to have a modernized aesthetic. The other thing I will tell you across the board is that I typically do not have properties with carpet in my portfolio. So having some sort of LVP or tile floors, something like that, I think that is also really, really important. I'm also looking at, I talk about modernized from a fixtures perspective or from cabinetry or things like that. But I'm also looking for an elevated aesthetic experience. So when a couple or a family walks into a property, I want them to go, oh my gosh, this is so beautiful, right? And if they don't do that, or it doesn't make me, get the warm and fuzzies when I'm walking into a property, it's not that I'm automatically saying no. What I am doing is working with the owner to help them understand, hey, listen, these are the expectations. If you want me to support you, and I'd love to do so, if I feel like it's a good fit, here's what I can do to help you. So I will do those updates and those upgrades and those modernizations on behalf of the owner so they don't have to worry about doing it. And if they're not aligned with that, it's not a good fit between us, and I will connect them with someone who doesn't have the same standards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a huge amount of sense. So just going back to investors, back in, and I when I still had my company, it was 2021, I think, when we just saw this great surge in investors coming in and buying up these properties and wanting to rent them out. And they had no strategy whatsoever. They'd done no background work, no homework. Is that still the case? Are investors still jumping in with no clear strategy? What sort of, are there common missteps that you're seeing right now? Maybe those people who've looked at some of those more than crazy videos on YouTube.
Right. I think there are absolutely still so many folks who are entering the short-term rental and vacation rental space who are making a drastic mistake. And I believe that drastic mistake is relying on their real estate agent to tell them what to do. This is, and I don't want to discount real estate agents. I'm a licensed real estate agent myself. Okay. So I don't want to speak ill of real estate agents, but what happens is real estate agents, when they are working with folks who are buying short-term rentals and vacation rentals, I believe should have their finger on the pulse of the market and understand the industry. And instead, so many real estate agents are in it to sell real estate. And I feel like that is the biggest gap where investors are coming in, they're relying on the real estate agents to give them advice, tell them what will work, tell them how much a property could earn. And a lot of real estate agents don't have the education, the experience, or the tools to be making those recommendations. And so what I see oftentimes is an investor comes in and very quickly realizes like, whoa, this isn't what I expected, right? And so I'm really passionate about helping real estate agents also become knowledgeable, understand the tools, and have resources to help support their clients.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it's a lot of what I saw, many years ago, going back to my first foray into the Ontario rental industry. I dealt with many real estate agents who had no idea about that. They could sell homes, but they didn't have the idea of the rental market. Mm-hmm. I mean, up here, the lakes freeze over in the winter. You can't tell what's under that water, whether you've got a sandy beach or weed. Right. And, that's one thing I used to say to people: don't ever buy a cottage for rental in the winter, because unless you've got some very good pictures. So, yeah, I really understand. But it's interesting that, I'm going back to the early 2000s, and here we are, 2025, and we're still hearing the same thing, that that there are real estate agents now who still don't have a good grasp on the rental market, even when they're in those markets.
Right. It's interesting, and I don't know how this is over in England or in the European countries, but here in the US, we've seen some very, very specialized niche real estate brokerages pop up that are completely focused on short-term rentals. And I think that is wonderful, because these brokerages, again, are providing continuous education, not only about real estate, but about the short-term rental space to their agents. And quite candidly, many of those agents are investors themselves as well. So I think that is a win-win scenario, generally speaking, when you have an agent that is not only in tune with the industry, but invests themselves.
Yeah. I want to pivot a little bit to talk about your community, because you've grown this massive, massive community. The number, I saw some numbers, 55,000 in your Facebook group. I think there's over 60,000.
Yes. Yeah. It's 66,400 the last time I saw.
What do you think? What do you think it is that has attracted women in particular? Because it's mostly a women in business community. Yep. What is it that is attracting people? I mean, what sort of engagement are you getting, and why are they hanging around?
That's a great question. I will say when I started the Facebook group, it was very much on a whim. It was not a plan, shall we say. I had a fellow real estate agent reach out to me, and he was actually serving folks within a beach market, and he was not educated on short-term rentals or vacation rentals. So he, just sent me a text and said, "Hey, can you help me put together some information for my clients? They're buying these beach properties. They're asking me questions, and I don't know how to answer." And so I said, "Sure, no problem." So I started kind of jotting down what would be helpful, I thought, as a new person buying at the beach. And it occurred to me that, I've been in this several months now, and maybe I need to go ask someone who literally is brand new what they would want to know. So I just popped into another female Facebook group that was for real estate investors and said, "Hey, I'm putting together some information. If you were buying at the beach for the first time, what would you want to know?" And the floodgates opened. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of comments. And someone within those comments said, "You should start a Facebook group about this." And I thought, well, I took a class one time on how to run a Facebook group. Sure, I can do that. And it occurred to me from the start when I started that I wanted it to be different. Heather, I see all kinds of online communities where people judge each other. They're rude, they're mean, they belittle one another. And I set out to create something different. That I set out to create a community where women felt like it was a safe space to ask questions, but to also encourage one another, be proactive about helping one another, take the opportunity to pay it forward and to light someone else up instead of tear them down. And so that has been my mantra from the start. It gives me goosebumps just talking about it, because, I feel like the world can be such a better place if we each just take a moment and think about, how can I make someone else smile today? How can I encourage someone else today? And so that's how I started my Facebook group. And that's still my mission to this day.
How do you deal with those? Because I'm sure you still have those that pop in and do make those insensitive, unkind comments, because it's everywhere.
I kick them out.
Good.
It's very simple. And as you might imagine, I personally cannot read every comment, and so I do ask the folks in the community, hey, if you see something that does not align with our group rules, please report it. And I will tell you, I have had some hate mail and nasty grams from people that I've kicked out. And I have often said, well, this is exactly why I'm kicking you out, But I feel like we need to set boundaries and stick to them.
Yeah, I think that's so important, and I think that's great that you do that. I'm all for free speech, but there is a great difference between free speech and trolling.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I've got a much smaller Facebook group for property managers, but I have exactly the same. I do not accept any form of unkindness. There's no space. I don't think there's any place in my world. There's no space in my world for unkindness.
Amen.
So yeah, I'm 100% with you on that.
We want to take a quick break here because if you're running a short-term rental business today, you've probably felt it. The industry is moving fast. Faster guest expectations, tighter margins, and now a wave of AI tools that promise the world. And if only someone had the time to figure them out. That's exactly why we built the AI Ambassador program. Think of it as training your very own in-house AI leader, someone on your team who knows your business, knows your systems, and can take the lead on implementing AI in a way that actually saves time instead of adding more noise. Over 8 weeks of live training, your ambassador learns how to uncover bottlenecks, evaluate pain points, map how work actually gets done, and identify where AI can make the biggest difference. They'll build effective prompts, create AI-powered SOPs, strengthen team communication, and choose the right tools to make daily operations smoother and more efficient. Then they get 9 months of group coaching to keep the momentum going and help you avoid the "we learned something cool but never used it" trap. And because so many managers are asking for support right now, registration for our next intake is officially open. And if you want someone in your company to confidently lead the AI transition, instead of everyone guessing their way through it, this is the moment to step in. The truth is simple. Early adopters here will be ahead of the industry curve. Register for our upcoming webinar series using the link in the show notes to get some quick AI wins and a taster of what your AI ambassador will become a master of. Trust me, this is the kind of hour that pays you back every single week.
And in fact, I was looking at a post the other day on a very popular Facebook group, and it was from a really distressed owner because she'd got a 4-star review instead of a 5-star. I've got 240 odd 5-star reviews, and now I've got a 4-star, and there was nothing wrong. They just gave me a 4-star review and said how much they enjoyed the place. And you've heard this. I mean, Airbnb have created this. Mm-hmm. And yes, I was a little unhappy at some of the responses she got. And there is an answer to it, that a 4-star review is absolutely fine, and just, you need to move on. But some of the responses were a little bit, a little bit beyond just a gentle move on. But going on from that, what would you tell your community about the pressure? And it is a pressure to chase 5-star reviews.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my opinion, the way that I run my business and the way that I aim to teach other people to run their businesses as well, we are looking to provide the gold standard. And gold standard does not mean 1,000 thread count Egyptian sheets and super fluffy towels. We are looking to provide a safe, comfortable, cozy place for folks to spend time with their families, right? And so much of the guest experience is not only in what you offer and not only in your amenities, but it is incredibly important that we create a relationship with our guests and I don't mean you have to know, their middle name. We need to make our guests feel welcome, feel special. And you don't need a $10,000 sauna and you don't need a $3,000 coffee bar in order to do that, right? And so I'm looking to provide best-in-class accommodations, but also best-in-class experiences for my guests. That being said, there are some folks who have different levels of expectations. I have gotten a 4-star review because they couldn't find a parking spot in the parking lot. And you and I both know that that is completely outside of my control. And if it's completely outside of my control, I don't even think about it. Mm-hmm. If it is within my control and it is something that's worthy of improvement, then I build a process to improve that guest experience to ensure that I don't receive that same feedback again. There are other times that I'm sure you've experienced this as well, where you just have a guest who isn't telling the full truth and is looking for either a way to get a discount or a free stay, things of that nature. And so what I also have into practice is I reply to each and every review that comes. And when that 4-star review comes, and they will, what's important to remember is that response is your opportunity to get a future guest. So we need to respond with empathy. We need to respond professionally. We need to help the review readers understand the full picture, right? And again, we only can control what we do. We can't control others.
That's a great answer. We had those, I gave you a 4-star review because it didn't have a pool. Well, right. It didn't have, for us up in Ontario, it was mostly because you didn't have air conditioning. Well, majority of older cottages do not have air conditioning, and it's very clearly stated, no air conditioning.
That's the thing. And sorry to interrupt you, but I do feel like I would love for all the OTAs, Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com. I hope you're listening to this podcast interview because I do feel like as hosts, we are judged by listing accuracy. I would love to see some parameters in place where there is review accuracy. I have gotten similar things. I wish, I got a 4-star review because I didn't offer a beach wagon. Well, we never advertised a beach wagon. So why am I being dinged for that? Right. So I would love to see some sort of review accuracy.
Yeah.
Oversight.
Exactly. And the thing is with those 4-star reviews is that you said it exactly. You write your response for the people who are reading that review, not for the person that you're responding to. So the person who's reading it is looking for that empathy. Yep. In that response. They can read through the lines. They're not stupid.
Yep.
If they've complained that, as I saw one this morning, somebody got a 3-star review because the guest got caught in traffic on the way. And they lost 30 minutes of their stay because they arrived 30 minutes after checkout time. Therefore, they wanted a third of a reduction in there.
Oh my.
But it was so clear that, anybody who's going to read that review, read the response, is going to see the full picture. However, what Airbnb has done, and the other OTAs to a certain extent, is make that need for the 5-star review contingent on whether they remain as a Superhost, which I think is Superhost really has lost any form of credibility anyway.
Yeah.
I know when I go and shop on Airbnb or Vrbo, I'm not looking for Superhost. I'm looking for the property that looks the best, and the reviews, when I read the reviews, that they sound like this is a great place to go. But I think Airbnb stands to, they're standing for something that is, you can be seen as unfair. When it gets to that point of somebody getting the 4.87 and then dropping below the Superhost status. And I can understand that. But But for the reviews itself, if it's a 3-star, if it's a 4-star, and it's a one-off, and it's mixed in hundreds of others great reviews,
yeah,
let it go.
Absolutely. And, the other thing too, I was actually at Airbnb's corporate offices a short time ago this fall. And, there was a big discussion around the reviews because, as you know, sometimes we are reviewed on things that quite honestly aren't accurate or it's not the full picture. And we request to have those reviews removed. And the response is, well, that was the guest's experience. And as a property manager and a co-host or even a host listening, that can be incredibly disheartening because, it might be the guest experience, but it's not the truth. And what was interesting and eye-opening to me, and I don't know if you have heard this as well, is that for a publicly traded company like Airbnb, consumer reviews have oversight by the government. And so Airbnb cannot remove reviews without the FTC, taking a magnifying glass and saying, hey, wait a minute, you're trying to skew potential shareholder views of how people are viewing the platform. And I thought that was a really interesting highlight that I had never heard of before and understood. And I did walk away going, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. But to your point, I think that there is opportunity for, again, all the OTAs to find common ground and a balance between guests and hosts where it doesn't feel so one-sided.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting, that point about the FTC, and it makes huge amounts of sense as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm like, okay, well, that's logical.
Yeah, I remember back to years ago, before 2007, before FlipKey came along and generated live reviews. Before that, we'd get reviews, and then you'd just pick the best ones to put on the site. That was it.
Exactly.
So I remember that time when we did pick and choose between reviews, and at the time I thought, oh gosh, this doesn't actually feel quite right. Mm-hmm. So reviews definitely have their place. But coming back on something you said earlier, if a review points out something that you clearly are falling short on, then that's a time to look at yourself candidly, look at the property and do something, make a change.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And, again, I think that when we talk about as property managers or even co-hosts, it's really important that we're dealing with the right owners so that if we do need to make a change, I had this happen literally 4 weeks ago. A guest stayed for over a month, reached out one time and said, the bed is lumpy. It's uncomfortable. Didn't hear from that guest again about the bed. We got a 2-star review from that guest because the bed was uncomfortable and she ended up flipping the mattress. Still didn't like that. She moved to the pull-out bed. She didn't like that. And I actually stayed in the property and the bed was wretched. I replaced the mattress right away. Like, it was awful. But you know what? My team, I felt like we had an opportunity to do better. Mm-hmm. I asked, did we follow up with the guest after we had that initial conversation about the bed? Did they reach out again? Nope, they never reached out. Well, did we proactively follow up with them and ask, hey, is the bed any better? Is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable? Well, no, we didn't. And so I've, again, included that as an additional process. So I look at those opportunities as opportunities to drive continuous improvement in our business.
That's a great segue, Stacey, into something I wanted to ask you about, because I never go into any podcast now without talking about AI, because it's becoming such a big part of how we operate in the business. So I was going to ask you if you're using any AI tools in your operations. And it comes to me that, I think going back to my own experience as a property manager, we did fall short in not being proactive, in not always following up, because we didn't have the processes and systems in place that we could have done. AI now allows us to do this. So I'm quite interested in how you're using AI tools, whether they're third-party tools that come with SaaS products, with the vendor products that are out there, or whether they're systems that you're implementing throughout your company independently of them.
Yeah. I use AI quite a bit, and maybe not in the most traditional sense, but one of the ways that we use AI is actually with our reviews. So we use a tool called Reva, REVA, and it aggregates all of our reviews across all of our channels, and it will actually give me a highlights section. Like, you might want to look at the mattress in this property. Now, sometimes those highlights are delayed a bit, so it's not instantaneous, but it is tremendously helpful to see themes. What are the emerging trends we're seeing across the reviews for a specific property, for a specific building that we're managing in, for a specific geography? And it can really help us get ahead of the curve. It can also help us, I mentioned the building. We can't control the parking in the building, as an example, but we can control how we're proactively putting information in our listing. So if we can get ahead of that challenge and just make a quick update to our listing, that can go a long way, right? So we're utilizing AI in our reviews. We're also utilizing AI in our data analysis. So I'm kind of a data nerd, and I have spreadsheet after spreadsheet that my teams actually populate data across our reviews. But what are our conversion metrics? What's our revenue for each property? What's our occupancy, our ADR, our RevPAR? We're looking at all different types of data points. And I use data visualizations to be able to see things. But I tell you what, I have started utilizing AI to also help me analyze trends in the data and make strategic recommendations based on what the data is telling me. And again, I'm so amazed sometimes at some of the things that it points out, because they're not things that I would glean from just looking at a spreadsheet or looking at a BI tool.
So are you using any tools in particular?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT a lot, and I create custom GPTs as well. So I just created a custom GPT to be able to cost out linen costs for new properties that come on board. So I spent some time doing that the other day, and I was kind of proud of myself that I built a custom GPT on my own. So again, I use ChatGPT a lot. I use Perplexity AI for research. Again, Reva has built-in AI tools. I am just actually onboarding an AI tool for guest communications, but I'm not going to use it, as you might imagine. So I'm onboarding Bestie, and a lot of folks are using AI for communications with guests. I'm personally not a fan of that. Like, when I experience that on the other end, I'm like, can I please speak to a human? So the way that I will be utilizing it is by utilizing a bot on my website and very clearly stating that it's a bot, it's not a human, but to also help my team. I have a 24/7 concierge team that responds to guests, helping them be more productive. So the AI bot will draft a response that they could potentially look at, optimize, and send along, or say, you know what, that's exactly how I would answer, or make changes. So it will draft a response, but we will not just automatically have someone talking with a bot all day. But that bot will also help with upsells. And that will be a tremendous game changer when it comes to additional and incremental revenue generation. So I'm excited about that as well.
I'm glad you mentioned human in the loop, because it bothers me when I once again, back on the YouTube, YouTube videos, automate your entire process. You never need to contact or speak to anybody again. It's just done by the bots.
Yeah. It's not reality.
No, that is not reality. It doesn't work. I had an issue, really going off the rails here. I had an issue this morning with my dishwasher, and I went to ChatGPT and I sent it pictures of the drainage valve, and I said, and it's telling me that you've got to do this process to get to the sump and the drain pump. And I'm thinking, I can do this stuff. So I'm in there, I'm thinking, no, you're telling me stuff and I don't see it. And I kept sending it more pictures, and it's telling me that, yes, there's these two little knobbly edges things you've got to twist. And I said, no, there aren't. Then it started answering me in Welsh. And I thought, yeah, you haven't really got this. You've now got into another language because you don't know how to answer me. And that happens. That happens so often. You cannot let this thing run on its own. Yeah.
And what's interesting, when I was building that custom GPT, I was asking the AI how to build a custom GPT. And I was asking, like, where do I do this? And it was giving me wrong answers about itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So again, if we are only relying on AI to communicate with our guests and be the voice of your brand, boy, oh boy, I believe you're doing yourself a disservice.
Where I think it really, and AI is my thing now. I'm spending sort of almost 100% of my life is in helping property management companies implement AI in a very ethical and moral way.
Right.
And I'm seeing more and more of these instances where you've got to have that human in the loop. You can't let it go off and do its own thing. Yep. So I'm really glad. I mean, where it does shine is in the analysis, in giving it information, saying, analyze this for me. And I love that you used the example of patterns and trends in reviews, because that's where it really, really shines.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has that opportunity, particularly with a lot of properties, to look through every single review for every single property. If it's 5-star, fine, all 5-star, they're happy. But there's things that are hidden away in those 5-star reviews.
Absolutely.
That are so valuable.
The other thing too that I use AI for is I analyze my competitors' reviews. So I also utilize that information to understand how I can better hone my unique selling proposition compared with my competitors and where there are gaps in the market. So I not only believe that it's a tremendous tool for your own reviews, but encourage folks to analyze competitor reviews as well.
Yes, incredibly valuable to do that, because you find out what is it that people like. Why are they choosing your competitor? So that's a great one. Gosh, I'm enjoying this conversation.
Yay!
So, but we are sort of getting towards the end of it. So I wanted to ask, there's a lot of people, a lot of women who listen to this podcast and who may be watching from the sidelines, interested, they might be a bit overwhelmed, unsure where to begin, whether it's with investment or they've got a property and they're thinking about setting out on this path. If somebody came to you today personally, looking for some mentorship, what's the first step you'd recommend to help her start out with, some confidence?
Well, it's funny. My answer is not going to be what you expect. And I'm going to say use AI, but I'm not going to say AI in the way that we all are thinking about AI. I'm going to say awareness and intention. Be aware of what you want from this business. Be aware of what your goals are. Be aware that there are so many opportunities for you in this industry, and move forward with intention. So often I see women who have big dreams, but are stuck in the corner because they're afraid. And I'm here to tell you, the fear never goes away. We just have to push through fear intentionally. And I can share from my own personal experience, it's not always easy to do that, but it's absolutely possible. And when you have the right people around you, when you have the right systems in place, when you have the right support, it becomes so much easier.
Yeah, that's great advice. And my word of 2025 was intentional. So you really hooked into that one. But you're absolutely right on the fear front.
Yeah.
I've been in this industry for nearly 35 years now, and I'm still fearful about getting started with something else in it. Will it fly?
Yeah.
But I'm getting to the point now, it's like, well, who cares?
Well, but you raise such a good point, because a lot of people are waiting for the fear to go away before they take action. And I believe in taking action, just knowing that the fear is going to be there, and eventually you're going to get through it. So people are in their comfort zone. When you get outside of your comfort zone, you move to the fear zone. And what happens is your subconscious mind wants to get you back in the comfort zone as quickly as possible. So you see people starting, they're excited, and then it's, oh my gosh, it's too much, or it feels like, I just can't handle it, or whatever the case might be. So really pushing through that fear. And again, you can push through that fear with colleagues, with peers, with mentors, with communities, with fellow STR sisters, as I like to say. And it makes it easier to do so. I'm here to say I still have days where I fear things, that I'm afraid, and you second guess your decisions. And I think, again, it's incredibly important to know what you're wanting, to know what you're going after, and to do it anyway.
Yeah, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway was one of the very first self-help books I ever read by Susan Jeffers. It still sits in my library, and I don't know when it was actually published, but I think it was a long, long time ago. I'm having a quick look. Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway was first published, 2006. I would have said it was earlier than that. But anyway, it's a great book if anyone wants to pick that up. Stacey, oh my gosh, I can't believe the time has just disappeared. But here we are. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, how do they do so? I'll put the link to your Facebook group, of course, on the show notes. But what if somebody wants to reach out?
Yeah, the best place to get me is through my website, and that's staceystjohn.com. My name is spelled STACEYSTJOHN.com. Best place to find me.
Fantastic. I'll put that on the show notes as well. Stacey, it's been an absolute pleasure. I get the feeling that we could do this again, and we would cover a whole entire different set of topics and still keep people's attention right to the end. It's been fantastic having you on. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Wow, what an incredible conversation with Stacey St. John. I really enjoyed that. I'm just amazed that we've crossed paths, but not sort of talked to each other in these last 5 years. So that was such a great opportunity to learn more about her and about her perspective on our industry. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines wondering if this business could really support the life you want, I hope today's episode has given you a loud and clear yes. I know the majority of my listeners are already well into this industry, but, it's never too late to start. So if you've come across this podcast because you're not quite into it yet, then hopefully this really, really helped you. That journey from buying her first short-term rental to where she is now with a multi-7-figure portfolio and this global community. It really is testament to what's possible when you lead with what she does. A lot of vision, definitely a lot of strategy and systems and processes and intention. What really struck me today in that conversation was Stacey's emphasis on community over competition, because so often in this industry we focus on the ROI, we focus on the reviews and the revenue, but what she's created with the short-term rental sisterhood shows just how powerful it can be when women lift each other and grow together. So a lot of gold in that episode. I hope you took away some nuggets. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed but deeply curious about what Stacey's been doing, her advice is simple. Start simple, start smart. It might just be what you needed to hear today. So if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone in your network who needs a little inspiration or maybe just a gentle push to get going. As always, thank you for tuning in. I'll be back with you again next week with more strategy, stories, insights, and of course, a smattering of AI to help you thrive in our vacation rental world. Until there, take care, keep going. I'll see you next week.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Vacation Rental Success Podcast. And before we wrap up today, I want to remind you, if you've been feeling that nudge that it's time to get ahead with AI, don't ignore it. The operators who lean in now are the ones who will be leading the market 12 months from today. Our free AI webinar series is your chance to see what's possible, get practical examples, and decide whether someone on your team should step in to that AI leadership role. It's simple, actionable, and built for real-world STR operators, not tech experts. The link to register is waiting for you in the description of this episode on your smart device and in our show notes. Go grab your spot now.
It's been a pleasure as ever being with you. If there's anything you'd like to comment on, then join the conversation on the show notes for the episode at vacationrentalformula.com. We'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to being with you again next week. It's been a pleasure as ever being with you. If there's anything you'd like to comment on, then join the conversation on the show notes for the episode at vacationrentalformula.com. We'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to being with you again next week.